Hello everyone, Number Consequence here with episode 6 of my high-level Dungeons & Dragons campaign playthrough. And this is the player character roster. There are 7 characters being run by 5 different players. And here is a roster of both human and animal NPCs associated with the party. Where we left off last time, the characters had just returned to King Belvor's townhouse after visiting their new barony and initiating construction of their Mott and Bailey castle. And you'll recall 2 episodes back when King Belvoir was hosting another dinner for the characters. Only this time the dwarf, Sir Hamlin, was invited as well, since he was the overall winner of the jousting tournament. And during that dinner, Sir Hamlin related a strange tale which he had heard just before setting out for the tournament. He said some dwarven miners returned from a prospecting expedition during which they discovered a dungeon made entirely of metal. The entrance was initially sealed, but then the metal doorway suddenly opened on its own. A few of the dwarven miners went inside to investigate, but the door soon closed behind them. The door opened up again several hours later, but by then there were no sign of the dwarves who had entered. The remaining dwarves decided not to enter the place, but instead return home and report what had happened. And it was at this point that King Belvoir asked the characters if they would be willing to investigate this strange all-metal dungeon. As you've probably figured out by now, Sir Hamlin's story served as my campaign's pretext and lead-in to this adventure module, S3, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. It was written by Gary Gygax and first published in 1980. And as per the module's title, it is set in the Barrier Peaks mountain range, located at the western end of the Greyhawk campaign setting. However, I moved the adventure location to the spot pointed out here. King Belvoir would have no reason to send the characters on this adventure unless it was situated within his borders. And just for anyone who is completely unfamiliar with this adventure, here are a few lines from the module's preface. This module was begun early in 1976 when TSR was contemplating publication of a science fantasy role-playing game, Metamorphosis Alpha. The Expedition to the Barrier Peaks will serve as both an exciting insertion into your campaign and as a primer on how to combine science in your fantasy role-playing. You can pause the video now and read the entire paragraph if you like, but suffice it to say that this is a mashup of both medieval fantasy and science fiction role-playing. I will also say that I ran this adventure specifically at the request of some of my players. They are aware of these classic old-school D&D modules, and they want to experience the game as it was played back in the early days. And now getting back to the campaign. After resting a day or two and stocking up on supplies, the characters set out once again. Only this time they were heading west instead of east. And just as with the trip to the barony, the characters spent about a week on the road getting to this new adventure site. Now, just like with all modules published by TSR at this time, this one consisted of a folded cardstock cover and a booklet, which is the adventure itself. However, this module also includes a second booklet containing dozens of illustrations. As you can see explained on the cover, whenever the players reach certain locations within the adventure, the DM is to show them the accompanying illustration. And that's what's shown here, the view as seen from the character's perspective when they first arrive at the adventure site. I've pointed out the actual entrance, the metal door, which the dwarf said periodically opens and closes on its own. And here is the view from my campaign, while the characters are waiting for the door to open. As I recall, they had told Jasmine and Quan to wait out here with the horses for a week. And if the characters had not returned by that time, then they were to go to the nearest settlement for help. Finally, the door opened and the characters approached. There was no lighting inside, and all the characters could see was a metal floor leading off into darkness. Just inside the entrance, on either side, were 2 more doors, both made of metal. However, they were closed and there was no handle by which to open them. And here is the illustration for a typical doorway found within this adventure. As you can see, there is in fact no door handle. There is, however, an access panel off to the side. These doors can only be opened by using color-coded key cards. You feed the card into a slot, and if it has the appropriate level of access, the door opens and the card is returned to you. However, if the card does not have the required level of access, an alarm goes off and the card is not returned to the user. Pointed out here is a small purple-colored square. I place these color-coded squares on the GM layer of the Roll20 tabletop to remind me of the minimum access level for any given door. The players cannot see the colored squares, so they do not know what access level of card must be used to open the door. I also placed off to the side of each Roll20 map this chart showing access level in ranked order. As you can see, the highest ranking officers carried gray cards, which will open any door on the ship. And it goes all the way down to regular ship passengers who carried black cards. However, there are also many doors which require no card at all to open. You just press a button. Doors which lead to common areas like mess halls and recreational lounges need no card to open. I should also mention that I imported a sound effect into Roll20 for whenever the characters opened a door. And of course the players found that amusing the first time they heard it. And by the way, if you're enjoying the video, please remember to like and subscribe. Back to the characters. Since they only just arrived here, they had not yet found any of the door key cards. Next, just across from the entrance, the characters found a circular structure with ladder rungs set in the wall leading down into darkness. And here is the illustration for that location. Eventually, the characters will discover that these are chutes reaching additional levels of the spaceship. However, for now, they left it alone. Deciding to go east, the characters passed several doors which they could not open. As you can see, they are coded for black key cards, which were carried by common passengers. However, as I mentioned a moment ago, the characters currently have no cards at all, so all they could do is just keep following the corridor. At this point, the corridor turned north. However, the characters also found here a small metallic humanoid-looking figure, which was standing completely still. And here is the illustration to go with this encounter. Obviously, it is a robot. However, the characters would, of course, have no idea what a robot is. That brings up another challenge that comes with running this adventure, one which Gygax touches upon. In a section discussing tech items, he says, information necessary for the DM is given, and some descriptions are included to be given to the players. These descriptions are couched in terms that reflect the character's ignorance of advanced technology. One of the big challenges for the players in this module is to avoid metagaming as much as possible. The players will immediately realize that this is a robot, but they should run their characters as if they have no idea what it is. In this particular case, the robot was non-functional. In fact, there is an open toolbox on the floor next to it. Obviously, long ago someone had attempted to repair this robot, but they never finished the task. Just to the south of the robot was an open doorway, so the characters decided to explore that space. It appeared to have been a storage area because there are empty metal boxes scattered about. However, anything of value had been taken long ago. Returning to the corridor, the characters came to a closed door which had no card reader built into it. It required only the push of a button to open the door. So of course, that's exactly what the characters did. The door opened, and the characters were confronted by 3 robots which were still very much active. They were police robots, and they all immediately spun around to face the doorway. And here is an illustration of what these robots look like. As you can see in this partial description, these robots do not walk. Instead, they get around through use of a built-in anti-gravity generator. They also have a built-in language translator. As soon as the characters opened the door, the closest robot began questioning them in an unintelligible language. However, as they tried to reply, the robot's language translator began processing the character's speech, and after a few minutes, the police robot was able to communicate with the characters in the common language. All three police robots floated out into the hallway and told the characters that this was a restricted area. They then demanded to see the characters' access badges, by which they meant key cards, to determine if the characters possessed a high enough clearance level to be here. Of course, the characters could produce no such identification. The police robots then warned the characters that they must leave this corridor immediately, or they would be taken into custody. Since the characters did not yet know the full capability of these robots, they decided to simply comply for now. Thor was worried enough about a fight breaking out that as soon as he got around the corner, he cast a mirror image spell on himself. The police robots did not follow the characters, but they did stay out in the corridor long enough to ensure that they were gone for good. Next, the characters returned to the entrance area and began following a wide corridor leading north. They soon noticed on either side of them doors which required no key card to open. They were push-button operated. So the characters decided to check out what was behind them. Alright, well that's how for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you can, leave a comment and let me know what you think. Please consider subscribing, and anything you could help support the channel, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now.